Hello everyone, I hope everyone's having a good day. Today we're going to be continuing with the presentation format, and this video is honestly, I have high anticipations for it. I am from Jordan, if anyone was wondering, and also I'm not saying this because I make any money from these videos, which I don't, but I believe that this video holds lots of value, and if you're watching this, I ask you to stay and watch until the end, because I genuinely believe that this video holds lots of information and stuff that bleed out into other countries and not only this country. So let's move in. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan's Economic Problem by Ozzy ICT. We're going to be speaking about Jordan's economic situation, debt and economic growth, and we're going to be referring to a passage in Cantillon's essay on economic theory. So, a brief introduction, because I'm aware that Jordan is not the most popular country in the world, and many people do not know what I'm referring to when I speak about Jordan's history, and this is just going to be a quick, brief introduction to how the country is agriculturally, demographically, and a brief kind of get to know it. So if you want to get into the monetary policy, you can skip a couple of minutes into the video and I'll get to that. I don't blame you if you do that, because that part is way more interesting than this part. But if you'd like to stick around and learn about the history of Jordan, feel free to do so. So, agriculturally, the position of the country is strategic. Facilitating regional trade that occurs within the Middle East, a problem it faces is the limited arable land, which is land that is able to grow crops on, and scarce water sources, which hinders agricultural productivity and growth. Demographically speaking, it is complicated. Like every country, there are people who don't want to achieve anything, but it is relatively well educated with a strong emphasis on literacy and education. The tourism industry contains rich cultural and historical heritage, attracting tourists to sites like Petra, Dead Sea, Wadi Rum, and more. Also, it has significant earnings from the foreign exchange and from tourism supporting the country. Growing investments in solar and wind energy reduces dependence on imported energy, which the country is struggling with heavy reliance on these external energy imports, but it is working to combat this with solar farms and wind energy. Refugee impact: hosting a large refugee population strains public servers, infrastructure, and resources. Refugees depending on international aid to support the refugee population. Jordan's economy relies heavily on just a few industries, so when there is an issue or a problem in those areas, like a drop in tourism or global demand for certain exports, the entire economy can be affected. The economy being vulnerable to factors that isn't in its control is not the best. There is also high youth unemployment, limiting job creation, and economic growth. Ongoing challenges is in implementing economic reforms, attracting foreign investment. Geopolitics of Jordan. Jordan is a country with challenging geography and limited natural resources. About 75% of its land is desert, making agriculture difficult. The most important area is the Jordan River Valley, which stretches from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. This valley is home to most of Jordan's 10 million people, with major cities like Amman, Irbid, Zarqa located nearby. The country's agriculture relies heavily on the Jordan's river for irrigation, producing crops like olives and tobacco. However, Jordan's limited natural wealth means it has to import most of its energy, and its economy struggles with high unemployment and poverty. So notice the river is around here, and you can see the main cities that most people live in are around this river here. Jordan faces significant economic challenges due to its geography and lack of natural resources. The country's small population and low agricultural output limits its economic growth, forcing the government to rely on imports for most goods, especially energy. In 2018, for example, Jordan spent around $265 million on energy imports. The government has tried to diversify the economy by developing industries like finance, pharmaceuticals, and tourism, but these efforts had only limited success. As a result, Jordan's economy remains weak, with unemployment rate of around 19% and a poverty rate that affects more than 1 million people. Security is another major concern for Jordan, as it's located in a very unstable region. The country is surrounded by neighbors with stories of conflict, and its borders, especially in the east with Iraq and Syria, and the west of Israel, are difficult to defend due to the flat, open terrain. These borders were drawn during colonial times and don't align well with the region's ethnic and cultural divisions, leading to ongoing security challenges in the east. In the east, the desert makes it easy for potential invaders to cross in Jordan. Meanwhile, the western border with Israel is marked by the Jordan River, which is a natural boundary but not a strong deterrent due to its narrow width and shallow areas. So the Jordan River here, which divides Jordan and Israel, is not the best natural divider between these two countries, which I will get into the relationship on the next slide. These borders can be crossed with a few, with some average manpower, and the openness that it has on the right side of it is can lead to security concerns. Jordan's relationship with Israel is complicated and shaped by the broader Arab-Israel conflict. Historically, Jordan controlled the West Bank, which acted as a buffer against Israel. However, after losing the West Bank during the Six-Day War in 1967, Jordan became more vulnerable to Israeli military power. Despite this, both countries recognized the need for stability in the region. They signed a peace treaty in 1994 and have since maintained formal diplomatic relations. The relationship is marked by mutual distrust, but also by cooperation on security issues. Israel, for example, has supported Jordan during internal conflicts to prevent the rise of hostile forces that could threaten both countries. For Jordan, managing its relationship with Israel is critical to securing its western border and maintaining internal stability, especially given the large Palestinian population within Jordan, which complicates the political landscape. Jordan's foreign policy emphasizes building strong international relationships to secure financial aid and military support. The country is the third largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid, after Afghanistan and Israel. This aid is crucial for Jordan, which relies on loans from international organizations like the IMF to fund its government spending. In January 2020, for example, Jordan borrowed $1.3 billion from the IMF to address unemployment and poverty, bringing its total public debt to $42 billion. This heavy reliance on loans and foreign aid is a significant part of Jordan's budget, allowing the government to provide social services and subsidies to its citizens. However, it also means that Jordan's economic stability is closely tied to international relationships. Despite its internal and external challenges, Jordan has managed to maintain stability in a volatile region. The government works to unite its diverse population, which includes many ethnic Palestinians and Bedouin tribes, to avoid the sectarian conflicts that have plagued its neighbors. Jordan's stability is partly maintained through government spending on social services, which is funded by international loans and aid. This spending helps to smooth over internal divisions and maintain the peace, but it also means that Jordan is highly dependent on external support. Jordan's strategic location makes it an important ally for many countries, particularly those interested in Middle East stability and energy resources. By carefully balancing its relationships with global powers like the United States, Russia, and China, Jordan has turned its geographical challenges into opportunities for international support. This delicate balancing act is crucial for Jordan's survival and stability in a region where the stakes are high and the challenges are many. So, I hope everyone got through that fine and it wasn't too boring, but now we'll be getting into more interesting things and this should be good. So, if you're still watching, I hope you can continue to the end of the video, and I don't get paid for you guys watching any longer my videos, but I do believe that does provide a deep insight into how the economy functions and how many economies function, not only Jordan's economy. Monetary policy of Jordan. Problem and solution. With Jordan's poor economy and high unemployment rates, which is, by the way, on this graph here, you can see it's around 18 to 19%, so relatively high. Rates are about 5%. However, the currency is highly stable and fixed to the US dollar, wouldn't it make sense to lower rates and somewhat inflate the Jordan dinar in order to stimulate the economy? Therefore, the rate of unemployment can decline. What hazards come with lowering interest and allowing the currency to slightly depreciate? I am aware that excessive inflation is possible. However, if handled properly, reducing borrowing costs can significantly improve the economy. In general, aiming to stimulate the economy using a stable currency has advantage in cutting rates so people are able to borrow money, expand business, battle unemployment, and boost the economy. So just a brief summary of what I just read to make it for you guys easier to understand. I had the question of rates are relatively high in Jordan. What is the problem with cutting rates, allowing the currency to deflate a little and expand the economy in Jordan? Because it's clear that the economy is struggling, and cutting rates would give the economy a boost that we all know needs. So this is a solution to a problem that I had first initially thought of, but there are deeper details, and we're going to be going into the problem about the solution. The idea that cutting rates will solve the economic problem is unavailable because of what the country is facing as well. One of the main problems is that Jordan might not cut interest rates to boost the economy, because doing so make the Jordan dinar less attractive towards investors, which would lead to a decrease in foreign reserves, and that would make it harder to back the JD to the USD. Higher interest rates abroad often attract investors seeking higher returns, and cutting rates in Jordan might not be appealing if it increases perceived risk with the idea that Jordan's economy might be weakening. The central bank balance and the central bank's balance sheet and domestic banks' debt issuance levels would show their financial health and exposure to global economic fluctuations, which we'll be going into now. And here on the side, if you guys didn't understand lots of things I just said right now, don't worry, we'll be going into deeper detail, and we're going to be going into a way where I can speak about it more efficiently. It's just that there's not enough information within this slide here to fully summarize what I just read. Analyzing Jordan's central bank balance sheets can provide more information on how much debt they issue, leading us to an insight to where we can see the level of exposure Jordan's currency has to the global economy. So what this means is that basically you can look at the balance sheets from the central bank, and you can tell whether their currency has high exposure or low exposure. And high exposure may mean that the currency is influenced by global economic events, while less exposure may mean that it's more insulated. You also need to recognize investment motivations. People only invest for one of two reasons. First is to reserve capital. Obviously, you want to keep your money at a buying power which is at its worth, if that makes sense. The second is by capital growth, by seeking higher returns, by taking on more risk, whereas foreign markets provide this type of return. So Jordan, with their currency, they provide this capital growth where you take on more risk. Especially those with riskier economies or currencies have often higher rates than the US, because it attracts greedy investors looking to be compensated for taking on more risk when investing those currencies. If you were an investor and you had a sum of money that you wanted to invest, you would want to be compensated with more return when you're investing in something more risky. Hope that makes sense. If anyone has a question, you can leave it in the comments. I'll be sure to answer it. And if I'm making a mistake with anything I'm saying, anyone can correct me in the comments. So this is where it gets good. So here I have the balance sheet, and I have the debt to GDP ratio, which is at a high of 89.4%. So we're going to be speaking about the balance sheet first. And it also bleeds into the debt to GDP ratio, so do not worry. The deposit rate holding at the range between 6.08, and 6.1, and the 221,000.70 million GOD assets totaling as of May 2024, a slight increase from April, and foreign exchange reserves at 15,132 million. Judd tells me that Jordan has a stable banking sector with a priority aimed at keeping it at a gradual increase in assets. So notice here it states here the balance sheet, and you can tell that Jordan has a high interest in keeping this rising. Given the steady foreign exchange reserves and the interest rates, this as expected attracts investors. So you see, the foreign exchange rates, they have been pretty stable with little to no difference, and the interest rate also little to no difference. So let me go back to what I was saying. This, as expected, attracts investors looking for stability in a growing market and makes it cheaper for them to pay back debts with Jordan's currency, which I would not be surprised if FDI levels play a big role in supporting Jordan's economy. Given the deposit rate, which is relatively high, in consequence, it attracts deposits, which indicates the borrowing is costly. It seems to me that Jordan has a very high interest in keeping those investors, hence not cutting rates and leaving the economy as it is. At the cost of people losing homes, a struggling economy, Jordan yet offers higher rates to attract investors. I think that paragraph is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll summarize it really quickly for anyone who didn't understand. Jordan, even though it's facing an economic crisis, I wouldn't say crisis, economic difficulties, it still has a interest in keeping the higher powers happy, keeping their money coming in at a cheaper rate to pay back debts, and for investors to have higher compensated returns. And it's not publicly put out there, but I can almost guarantee that the FDI levels that Jordan receives from investors and foreign money is probably through the roof, and is probably one of the reasons that Jordan has an economy. So, which, do not get me wrong, do not misunderstand me, it does broaden the economy, the FDI investors. But the main purpose of this, the true main purpose of this, is to keep the higher powers happy. So while yes, living in environments where lower rates are in place is better domestically, an economy that achieves low unemployment and stable inflation without ever having to have high rates is labeled as a perfect economy with no poverty. An economy that has high rates, that had never had high rates, and it has increasingly low unemployment, and it has a stable economy, basically, is labeled as a perfect economy, which, in place. Jordan does not have the connections with other countries or agricultural or domestic resources to do, and with a population growing faster than it can economically and industrially grow, the alternative the country has is basically creating a gap between the poor and the rich. And we'll be getting deeper into that. And this basically means that Jordan is not in a place where it can provide high standards of living to everyone and anyone just because it does not have the physical requirements to do so. So it has a higher interest in keeping its investors happy to create a gap between the poor and the rich. And we're going to be speaking about this more in the next slide. So, the gap between the poor and the rich. And here are some images that can dictate how severe it is in Jordan. Standards of living. Everyone wants higher standards of living, but not everyone can have it. This is the reason of rises and falls in interest rates. While those who hold significant assets benefit from asset appreciation, those with fewer resources suffer from rising costs, which in the next slide I'll be speaking about, which is a reference from the book I mentioned in the beginning. I'll read that one more time just because I want to really cement it into anyone watching. This is the reason of rises and falls in interest rates. While those who hold significant assets benefit from asset appreciation, those with fewer resources suffer from rising costs. Deflation plays a big role within the consolidation of power. As currency deflates, its purchasing power becomes stronger. But what happens to the people who do not have purchasing power? The real value of their debt increases, leading to financial stress to those who are borrowers. However, those who hold lots of currency have more purchasing power. It's benefiting the rich and keeping the poor poor. Although deflation cannot go on forever for reasons like economic stagnation and or increase of unemployment, political implications can also occur where policymakers implement policies in their favor and against everyone else's. Basically, just corrupt politicians. And I have two quotes here, which I found really nice, and I'm gonna read them both. I can't really. Okay, I think that says Leonard Cohen. That says, his quote goes, "The poor stay poor, the rich get rich. That's how it goes. Everybody knows. Plain and simple. It's bold. I like it. It delivers a message. It's the worst of all. It's true." And Thomas Jefferson's quote, which is beneath it, "A private central bank issuing the public currency is greater a menace to liberties of people than a standing army. We must not let our rulers load us with a perpetual debt." Here, you take another look at the rich places in Jordan versus the poor places in Jordan. You can see how exaggerated the gap is. Poor homes in Jordan and rich homes in Jordan. So here we're going to be referring to the passage from the book that I mentioned in the table of contents, and I'm going to read the highlighted part, and I'm going to speak about it in detail. Okay, so this, by the way, this is part 2 of, there's 2 parts in the book. This is part 2, chapter 6, page 149. So, "Their households will consume more meat, wine, or beer than before. They will become accustomed to wearing better clothes, having finer linens, and to having more ornate houses and other desirable goods." Basically speaking about people that have high standards, it's never enough for them. They want higher standards, which are it's the nature of the human. A human will never be satisfied with what he has, but he will think he will be satisfied once he gets what he already has. Consequently, they will give employment to several artisans who did not have that much work before, and who, for the same reason, will increase their expenditures. All this increased expenditures on meat, wine, wool, etc. necessarily reduces the share of other inhabitants in the state who do not participate at first in the wealth of the mines in question. He's talking about something that he mentioned in the previous pages about how a business owner who has mines can be accustomed to these higher standards. Where was I? The bargaining process of the market, with the demand for meat, wine, wool, etc. being stronger than usual, will not fail to increase their prices. These high prices will encourage farmers to employ more land to produce the following year. And these same farmers will profit from the increased prices and will increase their expenditure on their families like the others. Those who will suffer from these higher prices and increased consumption will be, first of all, the property owners during the first term of their leases, then their domestic servants, and then all the workmen or their fixed wage earners who support their families on a salary. They all must diminish their expenditures in proportion to the new consumption, which will compel a large number of them to immigrate and seek living elsewhere. The property owners will dismiss many of them, and the rest will demand wage increase in order to live as before. It is in this manner that a considerable increase of money from mines increases consumption, and by diminishing the number of inhabitants, greater expenditures result by those who remain. This passage honestly delivers a message perfectly. It basically is saying that when new money enters the economy, it boosts the spending of wealthy individuals on luxury items. This increase of demand that they have, it drives up prices for the things they provide. And those people with fixed incomes that we speak about in this passage, those people with fixed incomes or lower wages, they struggle with a high cost of living. So the rich benefit from the improved standards of living, while the poor face higher expenses and reduced purchasing power from most likely inflation. So yeah, this is just a great passage from this book, and if anyone wants the book, I will send them a copy of it. Just leave a comment in the comment section, and I will do my best to get it for them. Thank you for listening. I hope you made it this far. I put a lot of effort into this video, and I hope you guys can appreciate that, and I hope, most importantly, that you learned something from this video. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you guys on the charts next video.